Hello and welcome to today's lesson. We are on 5-6 here. Before you get started though, please make sure you have somewhere to take notes. You can use the notes that I have printed from the textbook, the more fill-in-the-blank style, or you can use your own notebook or own piece of paper. That is perfectly fine, but you do need to take notes. Today, our objectives, we are looking at parallel and perpendicular lines. So our two objectives are that mathematicians can determine whether lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither, and that you mathematicians, can write equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. So let's get started here. One thing that we need to know right off the bat is that you can determine the relationship between two lines by comparing their slopes and y-intercepts. We are going to be looking a lot at comparing their slopes today. We will obviously also compare their y-intercepts, but we're definitely going to highlight some pieces about the slopes here today. So, parallel lines. When we have parallel lines, obviously they go side by side forever. They never intersect. So, non-vertical lines are parallel if they have the same slope but different y-intercepts. Vertical lines are parallel if they have different x-intercepts. So when we have the example graph here, we've got y equals 1/2 x plus 1 in our red line in the red equation, and we have y equals 1/2 x minus 2 in the blue line in the blue equation. Because these two equations have the same slope of 1/2, but they are at different y-intercepts, they have different starting places, we do have a set of parallel lines here. So how can I take that knowledge and apply it here to try to write an equation of a parallel line? So a line passes through 12, 5 and is parallel to the graph y equals 2/3 x minus 1. What equation represents the line in slope-intercept form? So I am right off the bat seeing slope-intercept form, so I know that I need to end up in the y equals mx plus b form, not point slope, not standard form. So I know that when I have a parallel line, that it is going to have the same slope but a different y-intercept. So I'm going to look at the slope of my original equation, which is 2/3, and I am going to start off with my point slope form and work my way towards my slope-intercept form. Since I have the slope and I have an ordered pair, this is a good place for me to start. Y minus 5 is equal to 2/3 x minus 12. And from here, I can simplify to get to slope-intercept form. Y minus 5 equals 2/3 x, and then 2/3 times 12 is equal to 8. And then I'm going to move over to the right here. I am going to have to add 5 to both sides to isolate my y, and I get 2/3 x minus 3. So my original equation was y equals 2/3 x minus 1, and my parallel line for the given ordered pair is y equals 2/3 x minus 3. They have the same slope but different y-intercepts, so they are parallel. So take a look at this got it question, give it a try, and when you are ready to check your answer, please resume your video. Alright, welcome back. Here is the answer of your parallel line that passes through -3, -1. Your equation is y equals 2x plus 5. If you're not sure how to get that answer or cannot find your mistake, please let me know and I will help you. So now that we have done parallel lines, the second piece of our objective in our lesson today is perpendicular lines. So two non-vertical lines are perpendicular if the product of their slopes is -1. A vertical line and horizontal line are also perpendicular. So the main thing as we look at this here, first of all, perpendicular, it means that when the lines intersect, they intersect to form a right angle. So in order to see that in the equation, I am looking for the opposite reciprocal. So the two slopes would need to multiply to equal -1, and that would show me that it is perpendicular. So on the example there at the bottom,
Good morning, Steph.
Sorry about that. But if you look down there at the examples, we have a slope of 1/2 and a slope of -2. And so when you look at multiplying 1/2 times -2, it does equal -1. So that shows me that these slopes are equal to -1 when multiplied, so they are perpendicular. Okay, so some vocabulary words that I already have been using, but just in case you didn't catch them, parallel lines are lines on the same coordinate plane that never intersect. Perpendicular are lines that intersect to form that right angle, and then the opposite reciprocal are two numbers whose product is -1. So if you'd like to write those down, you can go ahead and pause, otherwise I'm going to continue on here. So, how can I classify lines? Are the graphs of 4y minus 5x plus 12 and y equals 4/5 x minus 8 parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Well, in order for me to figure that out, I first need to have my equations in the same format. So I've got one in slope-intercept form here, and I have another one that is not. So I am going to go ahead and simplify this so that it is in slope-intercept form. If I divide everything by 4, I get y equals -5/4x, and then 12 divided by 4 is 3. So I have y equals -4/5 x plus 3, and now I am comparing that to y equals 4/5 x minus 8. So as I look at those two, the slope of the first one that I have here is -5/4. The slope of the second one is 4/5. So first of all, I know that they're not parallel because they're not the same slope. So I know that that's not going to happen. Perpendicular, do they multiply? Is the product of these two -1? Well, when I multiply here and cross-simplify, I do actually get -1. So what that tells me, the slopes of these two are opposite reciprocals, or they multiply to equal -1, so these lines are perpendicular. All right, go ahead and take a look at the two got it questions here. There are two. Take a moment here to work with these equations, see if the graphs would be parallel, perpendicular, or neither. When you are ready to check your answer, please resume your video. All right, welcome back. Here are the answers. In letter A, it's neither. The slopes are not equal, and the slopes are not opposite reciprocals, so it is neither parallel nor perpendicular. They're just two lines that are on the same coordinate plane. In the second one there, letter B, we've got parallel lines because the slopes did end up being equal. All right, so now that we have determined whether they are parallel or perpendicular, or how to look at parallel lines, let's take a look more closely at perpendicular lines here. Which equation represents a line that passes through 2, 4 and is perpendicular to the graph of y equals 1/3 x minus 1? So, as I look at this, again, I'm going to start off with point slope form because I have a slope and I have an ordered pair. Now, the important thing to remember, this is perpendicular. So I am not going to use 1/3 as my slope. I'm going to look at the opposite reciprocal. The opposite of 1/3 is -1/3, and the reciprocal of that is -3/1. So for my perpendicular line, I am going to use a slope of -3/1 or -3. Then when I'm looking at my point slope form, I know that my slope is -3. I know that my ordered pairs here, I have an x value of 2 and a y value of 4, so I'm going to go ahead and plug those in and then simplify as best I can. Y minus 4 equals -3x plus 6. Add 4 to both sides, and I get y equals -3x plus 10. I did have to move over to the right there, I apologize. And so y equals -3x plus 10 is the equation of a perpendicular line that passes through the given ordered pair 2, 4. So I'm going to look over at my answer choices there, and my correct answer choice is in fact letter D. Y equals -3x plus 10. All right, go ahead and take a look at the got it question. Please take a moment, pause your video, give this one a try, and when you are ready to check your answer, resume your video. Alright, welcome back. Here is the answer. The perpendicular line that passes through 1/8, the equation of that is y equals negative 1/2 x plus 17/2. If you are unsure how to get there, please let me know, and I will be happy to take a peek at your work here and see if we can get that figured out. Alright, let's take a look at our final problem here for today. Looking at a real-world situation, an architect uses software to design the ceiling of a room. The architect needs to enter an equation that represents a new beam. The new beam will be perpendicular to the existing beam, which is represented by the red line. The new beam will pass through the corner represented by the blue point. What is an equation that represents the new beam? So it looks like I first need to find the equation, or at least the slope, of the original line so that I can figure out then what the perpendicular slope might be. As I look at this, I see that on my image here, my red line, I can see that it passes through the point 3,6, as well as passing through the point 6,4. There are multiple points that you could use, but these are just the two that I chose. There are multiple. And so when I use my formula to calculate slope from there, I'm looking at 4 minus 6 over 6 minus 3 to calculate that my slope here would be negative 2/3. So the slope of my red line is negative 2/3. Well, if I'm trying to find a perpendicular line that passes through this ordered pair here and goes perpendicular, I am going to need the opposite reciprocal. The opposite is positive 2/3. The reciprocal is 3/2. So my slope that I'm going to use for my perpendicular line is 3/2. I then take a look at that blue point. That blue point is at the ordered pair 12, 10. So I'm going to again start off with point slope form. I'm going to start off with point slope form and figure out my equation of my perpendicular line. Y minus 10 is equal to 3/2 x minus 12. And I can simplify that so that I can find my equation of my perpendicular line. So I have y minus 10 equals 3/2x, and then 3/2 times 12 gives me 18. Sorry, I'm kind of running over on that picture there. Hopefully you can still see it. I add 10 to both sides to figure out that my slope-intercept form is 3/2x minus 8. So my perpendicular line, the equation of that is y equals 3/2x minus 8. Alright, once again, you do have a got it question. So go ahead and take a look at this, and when you are ready to check your answer, please resume your video. Alright, welcome back. Here is the answer to your got it question. If you are not sure how I got that, please let me know, and I will be happy to explain that to you. If you have that and you are good to go, then it is time for you to show me your notes and get your homework assignment.